there, just wanted to whip up another Camtasia video of something that I think is pretty handy that I realize maybe not everyone knows about. So in your Camtasia editor, you're most likely working with both audio and video assets. If you spent any amount of time on the timeline with audio, you may notice that there's a long green line running across most of your audio assets in the timeline. So you may have also played around with it, and if you grab it and you bring it down, you notice that the waveform starts to shrink. And when you play it back, you probably also notice that it gets quieter. And when you do the opposite, when you bring it up, it gets bigger and louder. And if you go past the top or through the ceiling, as it were, it starts to sound crunchy and gross. And we don't like that necessarily. So I'm going to bring that back to 100 and talk about points, or like audio nodes, I think are what they're called. There's a really great feature in the newer versions of Camtasia called emphasize. So if you have a vocal track, you would drop emphasize on that vocal track, and it would basically duck the volume of any other audio track happening simultaneously on your timeline. However, emphasize doesn't work in all instances, and sometimes I'd like to have a little more control manually. If you've ever dropped in a fade in or a fade out on an audio track like this, you notice that a point gets generated here. And there's a slope happening. And the same thing would happen if you faded out. And when you move this line now, it operates the same way, but that slant still exists. So what can we do to help utilize this for other things? Well, if you have other bits of audio happening simultaneously, and emphasize just isn't quite cutting it for your project, you can double-click along this line and add more nodes. And so, for example, if I have a node here and a node here, I can bring this section down. Oops, my bad. You need multiple nodes to do this. I can bring this down, and notice that it only affects those nodes, and this third one is essentially anchoring it in place. So we have a slight fade in, consistent volume, and a fade back up to 100%. And this works with ducking as well. So if you have an anchor point, what I like to call a duck node, the other side of that duck node, and somewhere that I want to bring this back into stasis, I can just pull this middle bit down, and I have now successfully ducked audio. If you're finding that it's fading in too fast or not fading in fast enough, you can move these individual nodes back and forth until you get your desired effect. And that's how I use audio nodes in Camtasia. I usually have this middle line around 100%. If this is music underneath dialogue, I usually bring this down to around 20, maybe 15, depending on what the video calls for, and so on and so forth. And you can definitely do this. There are lots of applications to do this. If I add extra nodes here, if I just need to silence a bit of this music for just a really quick part, I can drop it out. I can move these nodes even closer to each other, and notice they won't go past each other, just to make a quick audio dropout. And you'll see that the waveform reflects what's going on here. So now it's just completely gone. And that's pretty much it. I just wanted to share audio nodes for those who aren't aware that they exist, because I use them a lot, especially when I do narrated videos, and I figured I'd pass that info along to you. Thanks for watching.